The charity event at the shelter was supposed to be quick and simple. That was what the CEO believed when he arrived that morning. He stepped out of his car with the same confident look he carried everywhere, the one that told the world he was always in control. Cameras followed him, and he kept a polite smile, shaking hands with people as if he had known them for years. But in truth, he only came for the photos and the chance to appear generous in the next company newsletter dot inside the shelter. Children whispered to each other as they watched him pass. Some were excited, some curious, and others simply didn't care. They had seen many visitors come and go. Some brought toys, some brought snacks, and some brought promises they never kept. To them, the CEO was just another adult with shiny shoes who wouldn't stay long. As he walked through the common room, he noticed something that made him pause. In the corner stood an old piano. Its color had faded over the years, and one of the legs looked slightly slanted, as if it might collapse if someone pressed too hard on the keys. The surface was covered in scratches from children who had used it more as a table than an instrument. Still, the piano stood there quietly, waiting for someone to bring it back to life. Beside the piano stood a boy. He looked around 12, or maybe 13, wearing a shirt that was a little too big and pants that had clearly been donated more than once. His hair was messy, and he kept his hands behind his back as if trying to make himself smaller than he already was. But his eyes were locked on the old piano in a way that the CEO did not understand. The shelter director noticed the CEO's gaze and walked over quickly, hoping to impress him by explaining the piano's story. "A donation from years back," the director said with an awkward laugh. "It barely works now, but some of the kids like to pretend to play." The CEO raised an eyebrow and looked at the boy again. "Does he play?" he asked, half curious and half amused. The director shrugged. "I don't think so. He just sits near it sometimes." The CEO smirked. Something about the moment entertained him. Maybe it was the cameras behind him. Maybe it was the way the staff looked nervous in his presence. Or maybe he simply wanted to say something clever for the sake of attention. Whatever the reason, the words came out casually, lightly, without a hint of seriousness. "If he plays the piano, I'll adopt him," the CEO said with a laugh. A few of the staff chuckled politely, unsure whether they were supposed to laugh or stay silent. The camera crew looked surprised, but quickly moved in, hoping the moment would create a good story. The CEO smiled as if he had made the perfect joke, but the boy did not laugh. He looked up, meeting the CEO's eyes for just a second before turning back to the piano. His expression did not change, but something in his face showed he had heard every word. One of the helpers at the shelter, a kind older woman, leaned down and whispered to the boy, "It's just a joke, don't worry. You don't have to do anything." But the boy kept staring at the piano, his hands slowly moving from behind his back. He brushed his fingertips over the edge of the instrument, as if greeting an old friend he had not seen in a long time. The director tried to shift the attention away. "Well, we have many other things to show you," he said eagerly, hoping to move the CEO to another area. But the CEO, now fully amused, didn't move. "Go on," he said jokingly. "Let's see if he can play." The staff exchanged uncertain glances. No one wanted to pressure a child, but no one wanted to upset the powerful guest either. The room grew quiet in the kind of way that made every sound feel louder than it should be. The boy's small hand rested on one of the keys. He didn't press it yet. He simply felt the cool surface beneath his finger. Then he pulled his hand back and looked at the older woman beside him. There was a question in his eyes, not spoken out loud. She offered a gentle nod, though she wasn't sure if she should. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she whispered again. But the boy took a small breath. The kind people take when they are about to do something they are not sure they can handle. Then he sat down on the uneven piano bench, which wobbled slightly under his weight. The CEO chuckled softly, crossing his arms. "This should be interesting," he said. The boy placed both hands on the keys, but he didn't play. Not yet. Instead, he closed his eyes for a moment. A deep silence filled the room. Even the children who were playing in the back stopped to watch. Something about the way the boy sat there made everyone pause. The CEO tapped his foot lightly, waiting. At first he found the situation amusing, just a small moment of entertainment in his otherwise predictable day. But slowly, something shifted. He noticed the boy's posture, the stillness, the careful way he breathed. There was no fear in his face, only something the CEO could not identify. The boy finally opened his eyes. He gently pressed a single key. The sound was slightly off tune, but it echoed through the room in a way that felt bigger than it should have. He pressed another key, then another, forming a soft pattern. The notes were simple, but they carried a strange kind of feeling, one that made people listen. He wasn't playing yet, not really. He was testing the piano, seeing how it responded. The CEO watched with a mix of curiosity and confusion. He had expected a messy noise, maybe a few random notes. But the boy's hands moved with surprising care. A small group of children formed a circle around the piano, whispering among themselves. Some of them had never seen the boy touch the instrument before. Others had seen him sit beside it for long minutes without playing a single note. The boy took another breath. His fingers settled on the keys again, this time with more confidence. But right before he began to play, a faint tremble ran through his hands, like someone trying to hold back a memory. No one in the room knew why the piano mattered so much to him. No one understood what the music meant, or what he was fighting inside himself. They only saw a quiet boy in worn-out clothes sitting at an old instrument. The CEO, who had expected nothing more than a child fumbling with a few keys, felt an odd sensation he couldn't explain. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a strange kind of anticipation. The boy lowered his head slightly, letting his hair fall near his eyes. Then he finally pressed the first chords together. The sound that followed was soft, shaky, but full of something real. No one knew yet what he was about to play. No one knew how deeply his music would touch the room. And the CEO, who had spoken without thinking, had no idea that his careless joke was about to change everything, not just for the boy, but for him too. In that moment, the world inside the shelter felt different, still, waiting, and the boy's fingers were just beginning to move. The moment the boy pressed the first few chords, the room grew even quieter than before. It was not the kind of silence that came from people trying to be polite. It was the kind that came when something unexpected was happening. Something that made everyone pay attention, even if they didn't understand why. His hands moved slowly at first, as though he was trying to remember something from far away. The notes were gentle, almost unsure, but each one carried a soft emotion that made people stop whatever they were doing. Even the children, who were usually restless and full of energy, watched with wide eyes. The CEO stood with his arms still crossed, but his expression had changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. He wasn't waiting for the boy to fail or stumble on the keys. Something in the boy's touch made him feel a kind of curiosity he hadn't expected. He had heard professional musicians play at expensive events and charity dinners. Their performances were always perfect, polished, and smooth. But this felt different. This felt alive. The boy leaned closer to the piano, and his fingers began to move in simple patterns, weaving a soft melody. The instrument was old and damaged, but somehow, under his touch, it produced a sound that felt warm and honest. Some keys were slightly out of tune, but the boy adjusted his playing as though he had known the instrument for years. No one knew the truth about him, not the CEO, not the shelter staff, not even most of the children who lived there. They saw a quiet boy who kept to himself, who never caused trouble, who spent his free time sitting in the corner of the common room. What they didn't see were the memories he carried with him every day. He remembered his mother's hands on the keys of a small street piano. He remembered how she would play simple melodies for people passing by. Most of them never stopped to listen, too busy with their own lives. But she never complained. She would smile at him and say, "Music doesn't need a big audience. It only needs a heart to listen." He did not understand her words then. He was too young. But now, as he sat at the old shelter piano, he felt her presence again. Every note he played felt like a soft echo of the moments he had spent beside her. The older woman who stood behind him, the one who always made sure the children were fed and cared for, wiped her eyes without realizing it. She had never heard him play before. She didn't even know he could play at all. But something about the way he sat at that broken piano made her chest tighten. The director leaned toward the CEO and whispered, I don't think I've ever seen him do this." The CEO did not answer. He just watched, his expression slowly shifting from amusement to something deeper. It was strange for him to feel moved by something as simple as a child touching piano keys. His life was usually filled with numbers, schedules, deals, and meetings. Art and emotion rarely slipped into his world. But now he could not look away. The boy continued playing, letting the melody grow a little stronger. His face remained calm, but inside, memories raced through his mind. He remembered the way his mother would sit on the little wooden stool they found one day near the trash bins. He remembered how she taught him to press the keys softly so the sound would not startle people nearby. He remembered her voice, gentle and warm, telling him that music could make even a heavy heart feel light. But he also remembered the last day she played. Her hands had trembled. Her smile had faded. She still tried to play a song for him, even though she seemed tired and weak. He remembered sitting beside her, holding her sleeve, hoping she would get better. Then everything changed. The sound of the piano in the shelter brought all those moments back, but not in a painful way. Instead, they came back with the soft glow of memory. They made him feel like he was not alone, like she was there beside him, guiding his hands. One of the younger children tugged at the director's sleeve. "Did he learn this here?" The little one asked in a whisper. The director shook his head. "No, I don't think so." He stared at the boy with a mixture of surprise and confusion. "I had no idea." The CEO finally uncrossed his arms, slowly, as though he had forgotten he was even standing that way. His eyes followed the boy's hands. He couldn't help studying the expression on the child's face, a kind of peaceful focus that he had not seen in many adults. He found himself feeling something unusual. Maybe it was a small sense of respect. Maybe a bit of curiosity. Or maybe it was the realization that he had made a joke he now regretted. He had said the words lightly, carelessly. But now, watching the boy, he felt something tighten in his chest. The boy's melody changed a little, becoming more hopeful. His fingers moved faster, smoother, as though he were telling a story without speaking a single word. The sound filled every corner of the room. Even the camera crew, who had been recording everything for the sake of publicity, lowered their equipment slightly. Some things did not need to be staged. The older woman leaned against a wall, her eyes fixed on the boy. She had watched many children come and go from the shelter. Some stayed for a short time, others for years. She knew their fears, their dreams, their struggles. But this, what she was seeing now, felt different. She saw a child expressing something that words could not capture. The boy continued to play until the melody reached a gentle ending. His hands slowed down, pressing softer keys, letting the notes fade into the air. Then, finally, he lifted his fingers from the piano. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a quiet breath rippled through the room. Some of the children whispered to each other, amazed. The older woman wiped her eyes again. The director let out a small breath. He didn't know he was holding. The CEO stood, completely still. The boy kept his gaze on the keys. He did not look up. His heartbeat was fast, though no one could see it. He didn't know how people would react. He didn't know if they would laugh, or if they would say he shouldn't have touched the piano. So he stayed quiet, waiting. The CEO finally spoke, but his voice was different now, softer. "Where did you learn that?" The boy didn't answer immediately. He looked at the keys, then at the older woman beside him. She offered a small, encouraging smile. He whispered, "My mom taught me." The CEO blinked, surprised by the simplicity of the answer. "When?" he asked, not out of curiosity alone, but also because something about the boy's tone made his chest tighten again. The boy hesitated, then said quietly, Before she was gone." The room felt heavy for a moment. The older woman placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. He looked down and pressed his lips together. The CEO cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. This was not the kind of moment he was used to dealing with. He wasn't sure what to say. The boy's story felt too real, too raw. A child from the back of the room suddenly clapped, not understanding the weight of the moment. Another child joined, then a few more, until small hands filled the room with applause. The boy looked up with surprise. He wasn't used to people clapping for him. He wasn't used to people looking at him with admiration instead of indifference. The CEO watched the boy's reaction carefully. Something about the innocence in his expression made him feel different, almost protective. He realized that the boy hadn't played for attention. He hadn't played to impress anyone. He had played because the music meant something to him, and that made all the difference. The applause slowly faded, but the warmth in the room stayed. The CEO took a small step closer to the piano, studying the boy with new eyes. He still didn't know everything about the child. He still didn't know his full story. But for the first time since arriving at the shelter, he felt something genuine, not amusement, not pride. Something far more human. And he had no idea how much deeper that feeling would grow in the moments that were still to come. The boy kept his hands resting gently on the piano keys, even after the applause faded. It was as if he was afraid to move too quickly, as if shifting his fingers might break the warm moment that had filled the room. His breathing was slow, but shaky, the kind that comes after pouring out more emotion than expected. He had not planned to play anything. He certainly had not expected people to listen. The older woman stayed by his side, gently rubbing his shoulder, as if reminding him he wasn't alone. The director stood close as well, still trying to understand how a quiet child he barely knew had just created something so moving. The CEO stepped closer, his shoes tapping softly on the floor. Each step felt heavier than before, not because he was tired, but because he knew he had changed without realizing it. The moment the boy started playing, something inside him had shifted. He had gone from a man simply visiting a shelter for a photo opportunity to someone who had been struck by the simple honesty of a child's music. He opened his mouth to say something, but stopped. He wasn't used to speaking from emotion. He usually chose his words carefully, in boardrooms and conference halls, always trying to sound confident and in control. But now he wasn't sure what to say, or how to say it. Before he could speak, the boy slowly lifted his hands from the keys and looked around. His eyes moved over the small crowd of children, then toward the staff, then finally toward the CEO. His gaze was soft, unsure, almost questioning, like he was wondering if he had done something wrong. The CEO cleared his throat. That was... He hesitated again. He wanted to say incredible, but the word felt too big. He wanted to say beautiful, but that felt too personal. In the end, he settled on something simple. That was good. Really good. The boy didn't smile, but he nodded slightly, almost, as if he was simply acknowledging the sound of the CEO's voice. The room stayed silent for another moment before the director finally stepped forward. "You never told us you could play like that," he said gently. The boy lowered his head. "I didn't know if it was good enough." The older woman leaned in closer. "It was more than good enough." One of the younger children hopped forward excitedly. "Can you play another one?" the child asked eagerly. The boy shook his head. His fingers curled slightly, as though gripping invisible keys. "That's the only one I know." This surprised the CEO even more. "You only know one song?" he asked. The boy nodded, still looking down. "My mom used to play it. I tried to remember everything she did." The CEO felt that tight feeling in his chest. Again, the strange mix of sadness and something he couldn't quite name. He had grown used to living in a world where people spoke loudly, expected results quickly, and rarely talked about things as delicate as memories. But here was a child speaking with all honesty, without trying to impress anyone. After a short silence, one of the staff members asked softly, "Do you want to take a break? Maybe get some water?" The boy nodded again and slowly stood up from the piano bench. His legs trembled a little, as if sitting there had taken more energy than anyone realized. The older woman guided him toward a small table where cups of water were placed. The CEO watched him go, feeling something deeper than curiosity now. He felt drawn to the boy in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the innocence in his face. Maybe the quiet strength in his playing. Maybe the connection he had to his mother's memory. Or maybe it was simply the fact that he saw a piece of himself in the child lost, searching, hiding emotion behind silence. But whatever the reason, the CEO felt unable to walk away. He approached the director, lowering his voice so the boy wouldn't hear. "What do you know about him?" The director looked surprised by the question. "Not much, to be honest," he admitted. "He came to us a little over a year ago. His mother passed, and there was no one else to take him in. He didn't talk much when he arrived, still doesn't, keeps to himself, very polite, never causes trouble." The CEO glanced toward the boy, watching him sip water quietly, his shoulders slightly hunched as though he still felt the weight of the performance. "Has anyone tried?" The CEO paused, unsure how to phrase the question. "Adopting him?" The director finished gently. The CEO nodded. The director sighed. "Some families came by last month, but he didn't really speak during the meeting. They said he looked too sad, too reserved. They wanted a child who was more active, more talkative, someone they could bond with easily." The CEO frowned at this. "So they gave up on him?" The director nodded again, with a tired smile. "Many people don't understand quiet children. They think silence means there's something wrong. But sometimes silence just means they've lived through more than they can explain." The CEO looked at the boy again, feeling the truth of those words. He knew what it was like to feel alone, even when surrounded by people. His own childhood had been filled with long nights, strict expectations, and parents who were always too busy to sit down and talk. He understood that silence didn't always mean emptiness. Sometimes it meant holding too much. He stood there thinking for a long time before walking over to the boy again. The older woman stepped aside, giving them space. The boy looked up when he felt someone approach, his eyes unsure. He still seemed a little overwhelmed by everything. The CEO tried to speak, but again, his words didn't come easily. "Why did you stop playing?" he asked gently. The boy shrugged. I don't know if people wanted to hear more." The CEO shook his head. "People did want to hear more. They weren't bored. You had everyone listening." The boy blinked, almost surprised. "Really? Really?" the CEO said. The boy stared at the water cup in his hands. I only know that one song. Where did you learn it? The CEO asked. The boy took a breath. My mom used to play it outside. On the street. She taught me how to press the keys the way she did. Slowly, with feeling. She said music should sound like it's talking to someone. The CEO felt that familiar tightness again. She sounds like she cared about it a lot. She did, the boy whispered. She said the song was hers, and mine. The CEO's eyes softened. You played it beautifully. The boy lowered his gaze again. I was scared. Why? The CEO asked. He hesitated. Then, with a small, trembling voice, he said, because I didn't want people to laugh or say I wasn't good. The CEO felt something twist inside him. He wanted to say that no one laughed, that no one even thought about laughing. But instead of rushing to assure him, he asked, do you think your mom would be proud of what you just did? The boy looked up slowly. His eyes soft, tired, but full of feeling met the CEO's. I hope so. The CEO nodded. I think she would be. The boy's lips pressed together, trying to hold back emotion. He looked away quickly. The CEO glanced back at the piano. Would you ever want to learn more songs? The boy hesitated again, as though unsure whether wanting something was allowed. Yes, but I don't know how, or who could teach me. The CEO felt something settle in him, a decision he didn't fully understand yet, but one he felt deeply. What if someone helped you? The boy slowly looked up, confused. Help me. Help you learn, the CEO clarified. Help you get better. The boy stared at him, unsure whether to believe it. Number one had ever offered him something like that before. Before the conversation could continue, one of the children called from across the room. Come play with us. The boy looked torn for a moment, but finally stood up. He placed the empty cup on the table and walked away to join them. The CEO watched him go, his mind full of thoughts he couldn't ignore. He felt a strange sense of responsibility tugging at him, not because he had made a careless joke earlier, not because people were watching, but because, for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was seeing something real, something that mattered. He turned back to the piano. The bench was still slightly crooked. The keys were worn. The wood was scratched. But the sound that had filled the room still seemed to linger around it. He stood there quietly, knowing that the boy's music had reached him in a way he didn't expect. And he had no idea how much more it would change him in the days ahead. The evening moved gently into night as the boy sat in the warm corner of the music room, still holding the last notes of the tune he had played for the CEO's team. The lights above him hummed softly, and the quiet space gave him a strange feeling, something he had not felt in a long time. It was safety. It was calm. It was the sense that someone was finally paying attention to him, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The CEO had stepped out for a moment after making a quick call, leaving the boy alone with the tall windows that reflected his small figure. He watched his own silhouette as though it belonged to someone else. Maybe it did. Maybe this was a new version of him, someone who was finally seen. For a moment, his hands trembled slightly as he placed them on his knees. He kept thinking about the tune he had just played. It had come from his heart, from all those lonely evenings in the shelter, from memories he tried so hard to keep alive. He wondered if that was why people felt something when he played. He never tried to impress anyone. He just tried to speak without words. Footsteps echoed across the room. The CEO walked back in, not with the same playful mood he had earlier, but with a soft expression. He seemed calmer, more thoughtful. He stood near the piano, looking at the boy the way someone looks at a rare moment they don't want to break. You did well today. His voice was gentle. The boy looked down, unsure how to answer, So he didn't? He just nodded. A long pause settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. Then the CEO walked closer and sat on the bench beside him, leaving enough space so the boy didn't feel crowded. You know, when I made that joke earlier, I didn't expect anything real to come out of it. He let out a soft breath. But when you played, something changed in here. He tapped his chest lightly. The boy listened carefully, feeling a small warmth rise inside him. I'm not making promises yet, the CEO continued, but I want to know more about you. I want to understand where you learned all of this. The boy thought for a moment, then spoke quietly. I just play what I feel. The CEO smiled. That's what makes it special. The boy relaxed a little. Sometimes he had trouble explaining himself, because his feelings often tangled into one long thread he couldn't separate. But when he played, they always found their way out. The CEO stood again and walked around the room, as if thinking about something heavy. The boy watched him pace slowly. After a moment, the CEO stopped and said, Would you like to come to my office tomorrow? I want you to meet someone. A friend of mine who knows a lot about music. The boy blinked, surprised. Meet someone? Yes, someone who can help me understand what I saw today. There was something honest in his tone, something that made it clear he wasn't trying to impress anyone or look good. He was simply trying to do the right thing. The boy didn't know what to say, but he felt a small nod grow inside him. Okay, good, the CEO replied. The rest of the evening went quietly. The CEO drove the boy back to the shelter himself instead of letting someone else do it. The car's seats were soft, and the boy kept his hands folded as he looked out the window, watching the city lights blur across the glass. Every light looked like a wish someone had made, shining gently above them. When they reached the shelter, the CEO stepped out and walked the boy to the door. The staff member looked surprised to see such an important figure standing there, but he only gave a polite nod. Before the boy went inside, the CEO leaned slightly and said, Get some rest. Tomorrow will be important. The boy nodded again. Something in his chest fluttered hope mixed with fear. He wasn't used to being important to anyone. That night, sleep didn't come easily. He lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. He kept thinking about tomorrow. What if he didn't play well? What if they changed their minds about him? What if everything went back to the way it always was? He closed his eyes tightly and breathed slowly. He remembered the feeling he had while playing earlier, the feeling that his heart finally had space to breathe. He held on to that. The next morning arrived quietly. The sun peeked through the shelter windows, and the boy sat up quickly, brushing his hair with his fingers. He didn't own much, just a plain shirt and worn-out pants, but he tried to make them look neat. The staff gave him a warm smile when the CEO's car arrived again. The CEO greeted him with a calm expression. Ready? The boy nodded. The drive to the office was different from the night before. Morning light gave everything a softer glow. People rushed on the sidewalks. Cars hummed past, but inside the car, it felt like a small bubble of stillness. When they arrived, the CEO guided him inside the tall building. Workers passing by looked curious but respectful. Some whispered, wondering who the small boy walking beside their boss was. The boy felt nervous, but the CEO walked slowly, making sure the pace didn't overwhelm him. They entered a large office with a piano placed near the wide windows. The boy's eyes widened slightly. He had never seen a piano in an office before. Inside sat a calm-looking elder man with warm eyes. His presence felt gentle, like someone who had spent his life listening more than speaking. This is the friend I told you about, the CEO said softly. The man smiled. I've heard a lot about you already. I would love to hear you play if you feel comfortable. The boy hesitated, but nodded. He walked toward the piano, feeling its smooth wooden surface under his fingers. He didn't know what to play. He didn't prepare anything. So he did what he always did. He let his heart choose. His fingers touched the keys, and the room softened around him. The notes rose slowly, like morning light stretching across the sky. His thoughts settled. His worries faded. And in that moment, the world grew simple again. A CEO watched carefully. His friend leaned forward slightly, eyes widening with each passing moment. When the boy finished, silence wrapped around the room. Like a warm blanket, the CEO's friend finally spoke. "This isn't talent. This is something deeper. Something rare." The CEO nodded slowly, as though he finally understood something he had been trying to grasp since the night before. Then the friend added, "He doesn't just play music. He speaks through it." Those words settled in the CEO's heart. The boy sat quietly on the bench, unsure what their serious expressions meant. He waited, hands folded in his lap. The CEO walked toward him, his step steady, his voice calm. "Today," he said, "changes everything." The boy looked up, uncertain but hopeful. The CEO continued, "There's something important we need to discuss. Something about your future." The boy felt his breath catch. Everything inside him stood still. Something was coming, something that would shape the rest of his life. The room felt quiet after the words the CEO had spoken. The boy sat on the piano bench, his hands curled together, unsure what the next moment would bring. He felt something inside him shift, like a door opening slowly. The CEO's friend gave a gentle nod, as if encouraging the CEO to continue. The CEO walked closer, his step soft, his voice steady. "I didn't understand you fully at first," he said. "But today I see something I can't ignore. The way you play. It carries something real, something honest." The boy looked at him carefully. He didn't speak. He wanted to hear the rest. The CEO took a slow breath. "You deserve more than just passing attention. You deserve stability. You deserve a chance to grow. So I want to ask you something important." He paused. "How would you feel if I took responsibility for your care?" The boy blinked. His heart jumped. He didn't know how to react. No one had ever said something like that to him before. "You mean?" His voice trembled. The CEO leaned a little closer, so his words remained gentle. "Yes, I mean bringing you into my home. Not as a guest. Not as a temporary visitor." His voice softened even more. "I mean adopting you." The boy froze. Everything inside him felt weightless and heavy at the same time. He tried to breathe, but his breath came in small pieces. Adoption was a word he had heard many times, but never thought would reach him. It always felt like a distant star, bright, beautiful, but far beyond his world. The CEO stayed still, giving the boy time. His expression was not rushed or forceful. It carried patience. "I'm not asking for an answer right away," he added. "I know this is a lot. I just want you to know that I'm serious. And I want whatever is best for you." The boy swallowed gently. His eyes grew warm, but he blinked quickly so the emotion wouldn't spill out. He looked down at the piano keys, letting his fingertips brush lightly over them. The soft touch grounded him. For a moment, he remembered all the nights in the shelter, the cold mornings, the quiet meals, the feeling of never fully belonging anywhere. And now, suddenly, someone wanted him. Someone who saw him not as an extra burden, but as someone worth choosing. He lifted his head slowly. "Why me?" he whispered. The CEO smiled gently. "Because you showed me something I didn't even know I needed to see. You reminded me what honesty sounds like, what heart feels like. And no child should face the world alone when someone has the means to stand with them." The boy looked at him, searching for any sign of doubt, But he saw none. The CEO's friend stepped forward and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You don't have to fear this," he said softly. "Your gift has opened a door, but your kindness is what makes people want to walk through it." The boy breathed slowly. A tiny voice inside him whispered that maybe, for once, this was real. The CEO straightened slightly. "There's something else I'd like to do for you, too. Something that could help your music grow." He gestured to the friend beside him. "He is willing to guide you, to teach you, to help you develop that gift." The boy looked at the elder man, who nodded warmly. "I would be honored to help you," the man said. "But only if you feel ready." The boy's lips parted just a little. He didn't know how to describe the feeling rising inside him. It wasn't fear. It wasn't excitement. It was something deeper, a quiet acceptance that maybe he finally had a place where he belonged. "I want to try," he said softly. The CEO's shoulders relaxed, as though he had been holding a breath for minutes. "Good," he said. "That's all I needed to hear." The rest of the morning was gentle. The CEO did not rush him with paperwork or decisions. Instead, he took him around the office, introducing him to people who smiled kindly at the small figure walking beside their boss. They didn't whisper or stare in a strange way. They greeted him warmly. Some offered encouraging words. For the first time, the boy felt like he wasn't invisible. Later, the CEO brought him to a quiet cafe inside the building. They sat at a small table by the window. The boy ordered something simple, unsure what he was allowed to choose, but the CEO encouraged him gently. "Get whatever you like," he said as they ate. The boy felt something unusual comfort, a feeling he rarely experienced when sitting with adults. There was no pressure to speak, no expectation to be cheerful, just a quiet space where he could exist without fear. After the meal, they returned to the office where the elder musician waited. He spent a while talking to the boy, teaching him small techniques, showing him how to control certain notes. But he did it slowly, patiently, making sure the boy didn't feel overwhelmed. At one point, the musician asked the boy to play just a few notes, not a full tune, just simple sounds. The boy touched the keys. Soft, gentle notes rose in the air, filling the room like warm sunlight. The musician nodded, pleased. "You have something rare," he said softly. Hearing those words, the boy felt warmth spread through him. As the day came to an end, the CEO walked him back to the car. On the way to the shelter, the boy held the memory of this day close. The way the CEO looked at him, the gentle tone of the musician, the feeling of being valued. When they arrived, the CEO stopped before the shelter door. He crouched slightly so their eyes met at the same level. "I know today was big," he said, "and I know it may feel confusing. So take all the time you need. Think about everything. Tomorrow, the next day, whenever you're ready, you can tell me how you feel. Whatever you decide, I will respect it." The boy nodded slowly. The CEO added, "But just so you know, my home would welcome you, truly." Those words hit the boy's heart softly, but deeply. He walked inside the shelter with slow steps. The staff member smiled at him, noticing the gentle glow in his eyes. That night, he lay on his thin mattress again, but everything felt different. The ceiling didn't seem so cold. The room didn't feel so lonely. He thought about the piano, about the CEO's smile, about the offer, about having a place to belong. A real home. No one had ever chosen him before. He placed his hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and warm. The next morning, when the sun gently lifted over the city, the boy woke with a quiet certainty growing inside him. He sat up, his breath calm, his mind clear. He knew what he wanted, and when the CEO's car arrived again, The boy walked out with steady steps. He opened the car door, looked up at the CEO, and said softly but firmly, "I want to come home with you." The CEO didn't hide his emotion. His eyes softened, his smile warm and full of relief. "Then let's begin," he said, Dot. And in that moment, the boy felt something he had been waiting for his entire life: a place, a family, a future. A new chapter began, not because he played perfectly, but because he played honestly. And honesty, when heard by the right heart, can change everything.